because everyone wanted money, just not from that point. So they could have worked on it. But when's not going to lose something? Come on.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think it's best that he's basically
Hey, what's up? Salute. That's very much so. You know what I'm saying? They're like my point on I just want to
I saw that on our tour. I was like,
it's so
smiling faces.
well, she's sad for that. At the time. So it was actually she got engaged. This essentially organizations whereas this is only we take the gap. So it just went all over the
Whatever your situation is.
I don't want to wait.
I call this meeting to order at 5:03 p.m. Will the Vice President of Operations call? Just a second, we switched computers and are in the process of switching to Google now too.
What's on?
Beavers.
Here.
Bird.
Here.
Kale. Kayla.
Here.
Chief.
Here.
DeLuca.
Here.
The Persia. Barton.
Here.
Galarza.
Here.
Golden.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Hall.
Here.
Ivy.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Kilgrove.
Here.
Little.
Here.
Lockins.
Here.
Marbley here. McGarity.
Here.
Moore. Moore.
Here.
Murphy.
Here.
Patel.
Here.
Powell.
Here.
Ramchadani.
Here.
Ramirez.
Here.
Sanders.
Here.
Saxena.
Here.
Skate.
Here.
Stephon.
Here.
Spears.
Here.
Street.
Here.
Teeter.
Here.
Durion.
Here.
Tribble.
Here.
Van Bryant.
Here.
Wesley.
Here.
Weston.
Here.
And Young.
If there are no objections or corrections, we will approve the minutes from last week's meeting as distributed. Senator Ivy?
I have a correction. Under the presenter's point A, number 2, the motion to suspend the rules and move into a current action item. We never motioned to actually suspend the rules. It was just said if there's no objection, so I think we need to strike that.
My motion. Wow.
Oh, did you? Okay. That's my bad.
Any other corrections to the minutes? Are there any students here to speak before the board? Hearing none. Our presenters this evening, or presenter this evening, is Miss Diane Newton, the Vice President for Finance and Administration, and she's accompanied by her phone friend, President Houston Davis. So if there are no objections, I will suspend the rules for 15 minutes to allow her to present.
All right, let's get this started then. One's my phone friend, except he's my button.
There was a Graham, and was there Goldie before that?
It should be HGA,
Gold
something
Graham.
right. Bottom of maybe. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the name of it was probably something. It's coming from the Board of Trustees, yeah, I just.
Remind me, I'll tell you the source of the high.
Oh, really?
While we're pulling that up, Diane, if you don't mind, maybe say a couple of words.
No, please do.
We appreciate the opportunity to be able to come, but we do know that we're tight. That's why I basically just said, hey, let's let Ms. Newton go ahead and present what we've prepared, and then certainly we'll take the questions wherever they go. I just want to say, really appreciate the dialogue that we have with you guys around a variety of topics. One thing that you're going to pick up on in this budget presentation, or talking about the potential budget for July 1, is that this has sort of been a rolling conversation that we've had with you back at the Senate and Staff Senate really over a couple of years. There's a lot around technology and the tech refresh. I mean, that started, really started with SGA and Faculty Senate independently making observations about things that we needed to do to improve in that area. And then, you know, things like where we are with room and board and the like, that is a direct outgrowth of conversations with you about what we can do to make improvements in some of the older dorms, kind of like Hughes, Conway, and Carmichael and State are in the queue, and then making major improvements in terms of overall food service and the like. So just appreciate that you're always there with us, looking for how can we make it better. We covered at the forum the other night, that I love about SGA, that you'll point out a problem, but you're always willing to put your thinking caps on and think about what a solution might be. So anyway, appreciate that. Diane.
Okay, so we have it, had the PowerPoint up, and at first I thought he was gonna turn around to me and say, well, it can't open up, and then April Fools. So I'm glad that didn't happen. So let's go on to the, or actually you'll flip through a couple of them.
Okay.
Here we go. All right, so these are the objectives by which we build pretty much all of our budgets, at least since President Davis has been here. So the first one is cautious optimism. So while we are cautious on one side, because that's generally what a CFO is, we're cautious and we're slow to engage in too much spending. but then we have to have that optimism. We have the optimism of the students, we have optimism of our leadership, we have the optimism of increased enrollment and increased engagement by our students. So we have cautious optimism when we build our budget. The focus on student success. That's why we're here, that's why you're here. You're here to succeed and to graduate, and we're here to help you do that. So anything that we put in the budget, we want to make sure that it at least passes the test and doesn't help with student success. So maintain stable reserves. Now that's the one I always put in there, and President Davis appreciates that, I think. We want to make sure that we're always a stable operating entity, and I think our students would appreciate that as well. And then, last but certainly not least, is to minimize the financial impact on our students, because we know how hard it is. We know that any dollar we add is going to have to be a dollar that you're going to have to find. So we're very sensitive to that. Okay. Next one. Oh, go back. I'm sorry. Okay. So, what are our top priorities for this particular budget? Student success initiatives. We have several things in the budget, like making sure that one of the things that we've added is a counselor for the in the counseling center. We added a full-time position there because we know that anything that we can do to help support our students and help them be successful is going to be important. So that's in there. We have a couple of academic advisors that are in there. So we have several things that are truly just student initiatives. Then we have the faculty, staff, and salary. We always want to try to make sure that we have enough money in the budget to adequately pay the folks who work here. You know, they do a lot of work. They're here. They put a lot of energy into you. We want to make sure that they're paid adequately. However, last year with the freeze on the tuition by the governor's office, we weren't able to give any kind of increase to our faculty and staff. Now we have something that we like to refer to as a COLA, which usually what we give is not technically a COLA because it does not meet the cost of living adjustment level. Usually what we do is well under the federal COLA. So we're looking at trying to put some in this budget, and we hope that we're able to do that. Again, this is a very preliminary proposal that we're putting together here, although we are meeting with the board on Thursday. So we'll see what they think about this. So strategic facility needs, I don't think you need to hear much about what that is because we've talked about it a lot. So we've got the health sciences building coming on. We just finished, obviously, a couple of years ago, the Common Core Center for Sciences. We're looking at a Wingate Center for Fine and Performing Arts. We're looking at an addition to the Lewis Science Center to handle some of those engineering programs that we're bringing on board. We have the Safe Room at Bear Village. We've got Creek Village 2. What else do we have? We have a whole bunch of them. So we've got a lot of initiatives, and I think you know, you're all going to benefit from those as students. We have the technology refresh, and this is one that I can only talk to about this level, this deep, but we've talked a lot about increasing or bringing up to date what we have as a technology base, and not just bringing it up to date, but trying to keep up from this point forward, which is something we weren't able to do. 7 years ago, we did put a significant amount of money into our technology base, but what we didn't do was maintain it from that point forward. So what we've done is we've just fallen farther and farther behind, but not this time. So if you've heard, I think y'all have heard the CIO talk about the work that we're doing on campus. We've talked about it when we've discussed the technology fee and the increase that has gone into place. So, so we're real pleased with what we're going to be able to do there. And then the scholarship management, that's something that we have to we have to review, we have to look at on an ongoing basis, trying to find the best fit for us as a university and who we are on how to manage those very precious funds that we have. Okay, so what we're looking at here, if you you can look over at the right-hand column, because what this chart is meant to do is to identify the potential revenue streams that we'll have, or how much we're going to be getting, so we know how much I've got to work with. So with the general tuition, we have, as you remember, we have tuition and fees. So the general tuition looks like it'll bring in about just under $2.5 million. I can say that the majority of that, it would take the majority of that to give a COLA to the faculty and staff. So that really doesn't give us a whole lot left over to do other things with. Then on the fee side,
Yeah, Diane, it might be
yes, sir.
good to know 1 percentage point pay increase, so just 1%, which is roughly a third of a true cost of living adjustment at the federal level, is $978,000.
Just under
So
$1 million.
1 percentage point equals about $1 million. Easy way to look at it. And again, we've cut cost of living, depending upon which basket of goods and services you've got, go anywhere between 2.3 to 3.1%. Cost of living for a higher ed generally settles around 2.7%. So you can do the math in your head about how much money that would pay.
So the next area are your fees that you pay. So we've already put in some of the additions to the different fees. For example, facilities fee, technology, and the student success. Those are the three that we're looking at this year. And that shows you what that would generate in new revenue, assuming that enrollment came in at today's level of enrollment, or this fiscal year's level of enrollment. And then the next section, those are the auxiliaries. That's going to be the athletic fee and room and board. And we're going to see some more slides on down through the deck that will show you a little bit about where we are in these areas. Okay. So this is a really cool slide, and I think it is pretty meaningful. So if you look at the next to the bottom line, that FY19, it's in the purple, that's where we are if you follow across on the athletic fee, the facility fee, and the technology fee. So these are all the other schools, and this is where they are right now for this current year. So if we raised these fees at a pretty steady level, what we're proposing in order to pay the debt on some of the buildings that we've got coming on, the bottom line is where we would be in FY24. Okay, but before I go there, everything that's in orange, they're more than us right now. But the real kicker is if you look at those that had the red font, in 5 years, those are the ones that will still be ahead of where we are right now. So they would be higher in those fees than we are right now. And I think that what this does is it demonstrates how frugal we've been on our fees over the years, that we're really, we've been on the low end. And the president likes this slide, and I'll give him an option to jump in here if you like.
Well, look, I mean, I know from talking with my peers at all the other universities, they're going up in every single one of those fees too. You can bet that if you were to fast forward in FY24 and you were to apply that same orange shading, we probably would stack the exact same way. So we, again, we think for both the near term as well as what I would call the medium term, looking out 5 years, we think that these fees would stay well within the range of what the university would look at. Actually, well within what especially the Fayettevilles, Jonesboro's, and folks like that.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, so these are the slides that I was referring to, where you can kind of see where we are now compared to the others. So if you look at this slide, this is just tuition and fees, your mandatory tuition and fees. Right in the middle, you'll see the purple, UCA. That's where we are this year, and everybody else, that's where they are this year. So we've done some projections of different levels of increases, and the one that we're kind of landing on, thank you so much, Spencer, what we're kind of landing on would put us where that lavender line is. It would be second from the left. So, if we made a particular increase with one of the ones we're looking at, that's where it would put us, and that's where we would be compared to all the other schools with their tuition this year. That's assuming they don't go up at all, and we know that that's not gonna be the case. We know, particularly after last year, having to freeze our tuition. So we know that there's gonna be some movement, and quite frankly, I would not be surprised how tight those are, that we would end up in the same place that we are now. I would imagine that we would.
I'm trying to remember who's right behind that, is it SAU? If I were betting money right now, we'll actually shift one spot to the right. When it does so.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, so this one is for our room rates. And again, you see us in the dark purple, and based on what we're proposing, would move us up over UALR. But then again, this is what all of the other schools are charging this year, and we feel certain that they'll make some adjustment as well. And so I would not be surprised to be back where we are in the middle of the pack. Okay. Oh, and here's our board rates, our food service. So you'll see us in the dark purple all the way to the right. So we are the least expensive of all the institutions in this state, the four-year public institutions. And we are next to the last, I believe, in the entire Southland Conference. So we think that we probably may be restricting what we're allowing Aramark to do by keeping the rates so low to our students. In order to do better, we're gonna have to provide them more funding to provide that service to our students. So we've proposed an increase that would move us up 2 spots, but you see how tight all those are again? We're probably gonna be either last or next to last again. So, but you can see what this is showing you on all of these so far is that we're very competitive in there. We're positioned about in the middle of the pack in some of them, and in this one, we're the least expensive of all of them. I hate to say the cheapest because that sounds bad, but we are the least expensive. We do a good job, I believe, with what they have to work with. So, okay, going to the next one. So this is room and board together. So you see where we are. We would move up 1, and then I'm assuming that once any of the other colleges make any move at all, we'll be right back where we were. Okay. And this is looking at tuition, fees, room, and board, so the full package. Again, we just move up 1, and as tight as those are, any movement made by other campuses, it's probably going to leave us back in the same spot. All right, so then what are we looking at right now? We're looking at tuition at about 4.4, and fees, combining all the fees, is about a 6.73 on that portion of it. And then both room and board, we're looking at about a 5%. And that's what this proposal is. And this is what we're going to take to the board this week, with an overall total of about 5%. And the next one, I believe that's it. It's discussion. So that's it. President Davis, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, again, stress that we like the fact that we've, still have multiple conversations this month and next with the board about this budget, but we definitely, your feedback, your observations, are very important, but I hope you also have seen that kind of rolling conversation we've had the last couple of years. We're trying to plow whatever scarce dollars are generated into those things that we feel like are priorities. And I absolutely always say this regarding tuition and fees. We do feel good about the fact that the value proposition we have here at UCA is that we are about the best bang for the buck that you're going to get in Arkansas higher education. We take a lot of, we put a lot of stake in the fact that when we compare ourselves to those other institutions, but we also remember that we can't forget that a lot of our students really struggle. Most of our students really struggle, and any of those dollar figures that are up there are challenges to your families making ends meet. So that's why we really do. We were thrilled the other night. We had Laurels and Stripes, there'll be an announcement going out in the press tomorrow. We raised $719,000 towards scholarships, purely to scholarship, endowed scholarship funds. We've got to double down on, I think there were 660 students that were available to receive private scholarships this last year. I said at our SGA forum the other night that we really need to double that to about 1,200 to be able to make certain that we're meeting those last dollar scholarship needs of a lot of our students that are $100 between staying enrolled or having to drop out. So we don't take for granted any dollar that's represented there. We know we favorably compare to our peers, but it's got to get down to one-on-one student to university conversation about what the needs are.
What questions do you have for Senator Teeter?
Ms. Newton, just from our, discussing this last semester, for those that don't remember, we looked over the athletic fee with Dr. Teague. For what purpose would we raise the athletic fee?
Well, when, honestly, just increasing cost to run the program. We have not raised it in probably 3 years. And what we need to do is get into a pattern so that we're raising it maybe every other year to keep up with the cost of living, because that's an auxiliary enterprise. So they have to fund anything that goes to their program. If their scholarships go up, and, even academic scholarship, anything goes up, they have to pay for it. So if their salaries go up, if we give a raise, they have to pay for it. So in order to do that, they've got to have more money coming in. And to me, it makes more sense to do a little bit, maybe every other year, than have to, wait a while, struggle, and then give a big increase. So that's what I'm going to be proposing, is just try to have a steady increase, maybe $1 every other year or something.
I appreciate it. Follow-up question. So in our SVAC report from last semester, we suggested a possible increase to the access and security fee, emphasis on the security side of that. Do either of y'all think that anything like that's going to happen here in the next couple of years or so?
Well, we're not looking at it this year, but we do have funds set aside for security needs. Because what happens to that money is it goes into these carryover accounts, so that and we're already using a lot of it, obviously for the blue lights, we use it for the cameras, some of the lock systems on the doors, so we use it for those purposes. But right now, we don't think it really needs an increase unless y'all are telling us that there are things that we're not able to fund. And at that point, then we need to readdress. We need to look at it.
Senator Johnson.
Thank you for coming today. I guess my question was sort of, and I know this is probably going to be situational depending on staff and faculty, but I like your charts showing comparisons between our rates and other schools' rates. Is there a chart for where our compensation for our faculty and staff compares to other universities in the state, as far as us competing with them for getting the best faculty and staff?
I'm not sure. I know I don't keep that particular chart necessarily, but I know that the Department of Education probably has that kind of information. We have CUPA, we have various other agencies that maintain that information, but we have things that we can pull together from other institutions to make that. That's just hard to get apples to apples.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah. Experiences.
I believe the president has something to add.
Well, I might add that it is hard to get apples to apples because you have a different mix of different colleges, graduate faculty, undergraduate faculty, different roles of staff, patterns in different universities. But what we do have is something in the last year we've made a major step toward. Individual staff, individual faculty, comparison to the closest peer that we can find. Diane mentioned CUPA data, the College, University, and Personnel Association. They collect national information on, to be able to say, all right, for all financial aid directors in this region of the country, what their average salary is, all assistant professors in political science, what their salaries are. So you have about 80% of all possible positions that you can find a match for in that CUPA data. But then we've also gone further to look at what, for every single staff position and faculty position that we have, what is their counterpart at ULR, at Arkansas State, at Fayetteville, for for some, certainly at Arkansas Tech. Anybody that we find ourselves regularly in a bidding war, if you will, once you start trying to hire somebody on a regional or national basis, because that national data is important, but it's really important for us to make certain that we're not in a position where any regional school around us is stealing away. Last year we had 34 faculty and staff, and then that creates a where are you against a target. So 100% would be you're right at your average. We had 34 faculty and staff, 17 actually strangely each, that were below 75% of their target. We were able to, and some of them were down in the 60th percentile. We were able to spread a little bit of money, it was just $125,000, toward getting those 34 individuals up to 78.7% of their target. And when the board talks about being able to put money toward market and equity adjustments, that's where they're trying to find as much money as they can to be able to start making some penetration in that model where maybe we get to the point where we know that no one at UCA is below 83% of what their target is. And then the next year, we aim for 87. We'll look up and you get 92, 93. In Georgia, we do this regularly. Every school had their market and equity, and we always ask them in every budget hearing, where were they on being able to make their gains toward 100%. And that's what we're trying to do, but that gets down to an individual person, as opposed to trying to get that institutional data, which has a lot of wash in it because we all have different missions. That may be too much.
Yeah, but would you say so 75% is like your current like target number?
I'd say that, well, right now what we know is that everybody that works for UCA is at 78.7% of what that market and equity study says. To get, this will give you some sense of those numbers again, to get to 100% would be about $5 million. All right, so we're talking about a significant coin at that point. The reality is you've got a lot of tight clustering of those individuals that are 85% up to 95% to reach that goal. That's where you've got about 3.5 of that 5 million. But what we want to do is, the worst thing you can do is ignore that and let it sit aside for a couple more years, because then you'll look up and you went from 78.7 back down to 65, because every school and every organization is moving. And then we got things like IT, auditors, people in budget and finance. These are individuals that can work for any private business, public, and you pick it. So we're dealing with a very, very tight labor market in some of those positions as well. So not all positions are necessarily created equally, but we do try and get as close as we can. And again, 78.7 is nothing to brag about, but that was far better than saying 34 people were far short of that.
Thank you.
Senator Farnham. Thank you for coming and speaking to us today. My question was about the graphs. I love the graphs. I love data so much. That's why I'm actually here. But anyway, so I noticed for most of them you had our current year and then the fiscal year for, it was either 2019 or 2020. I think it kind of changed on a few of them. And it is, I agree, safe to assume that the other schools are also going to go up. I was curious if there is an entity or organization that's credible enough to pull forecasting data from. I know sometimes, I don't know if the Department of Education does this, but they actually have all of the other schools and what they predict they will be at for that fiscal year. Whether, and I know this might even be difficult because of the tuition hold, it kind of be, it wouldn't be as accurate because of that gap. But I was wondering if those exist, and maybe if including those as well, not only saying we know they will increase, but we have done the math and they're projected to have increased to this much. And that way you can actually show that shift rather than saying there is a shift.
Well, we actually did do that
Okay.
research, and we pulled 5-year data. The Department of Higher Education actually has the data on 5-year trends. They actually have it for longer than that, but they do a report every year on all the 4-year institutions and the 5-year history of their increases. So we did pull that data, and we tried to imagine if they increased the average of what they've increased over the last 5 years, what would that be? But I think there's you have to be very careful doing that. Just assuming that they're going to go up the average of what they did, because you don't know what's really going on in that environment necessarily. Like if they pulled our data, it would look much lower. Right now, we have the lowest of the 5-year increases of any of the 10 4-year campuses. However, they would not necessarily have any way to predict that we were all of a sudden going to build 2 academic buildings and do a technology refresh, and we would need the funds to fund that increase. So they wouldn't necessarily know that. So it gets a little dangerous. You can do it, but you don't really want to put it out there because you're making, you're making assumptions of different campuses.
Well, the information you're talking about forecasting future, that doesn't exist anywhere. No state has done that because we've not done that. It would just be speculation again.
It is.
Something about you can look at a 5-year, 10-year regression line and then carry that out into the future as to what it might predict. But right now, my counterparts at all the campuses are having the exact same conversation. Except I would say this: are we recording this? So be careful saying this next line. All right, then I'm not going to say it. I'll tell it to you offline. Most of our counterparts are having conversations like this. A lot of them don't even know who their SBA president is. By all means, what I think we want to be able to do is look at that snapshot in time. Where are we now? Where do we think peer institutions will likely be next year, maybe the year after that? And then our board wants to know, are we making certain to stay in line with board market, which say we should be. But the idea of being able to predict in the future, I don't know that anybody could have predicted 20 years ago that the state would only be funding 38% of what it costs to educate you guys. Because no one would have known all of the prison reform cases that came forward and the courts ordered, for more money to go to corrections. No one could have predicted everything that was going to happen with healthcare for those 20 years. And certainly no one could have predicted all the court cases that resulted in K-12 equalization and forced, rightfully so, a lot of money to go to K-12 schools. So 95 cents on every dollar is taken up by those three things: corrections, K-12, K-12 and healthcare. So the reality is states have had to do where they are. But who knows as we look to the future? We're very glad that we get the support that we do from the state. The percentage here is higher than at two of my other 3 states that I've worked in. But we've really got to accept the fact that from this point forward, it's either reallocating an existing dollar, tuition and fees, or raising private money. That's where new dollars are going to come from, because it's just not going to come from the state. So that's, if there's any reality, we'd accept it as that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Senator Spears.
So I know that throughout this past year, and especially the past couple months, UCA has been great, blessed with having the Wingate Foundation and many other private donations and the like. So I was curious to see how confident you guys are. I know the Wingate Foundation is a matching donation. How confident would you guys be in saying that UCA would either have to use the fee increases to either pay for those new buildings, or maybe procuring private funds to see that matching
Do we want to do combo on this one?
Yeah,
Probably
and I
speak
think
more
you
to
can
the
juxtapose
fundraising.
the integrated health sciences against fine and performing arts, 2 very different situations.
As far as, so how confident are we that we're going to be able to raise the private funds?
Yes.
Honestly, after things like the scholarship dinner and after the Day of Giving, I feel, and the Wingate announcement, I feel very confident that we're going to be able to raise some additional funding. But we also know we have to be realistic, and we know that we're probably going to be looking at an additional bond for some of it. But because of those great gifts, it's going to be much less than it would have been. So we're really pleased about that. And what would you like to add?
I lay those 2 big projects aside, and say let's compare and contrast. Integrated Health Sciences, $38 million facility. We know that we have waiting lists for just about every single program that feeds into that program in the future. We could not afford to sit back and wait on a matching campaign to raise the money for that facility. We had to move forward, and the board affirmed that with moving forward on the bond issue, which is going to allow us to increase the capacity on those programs. Fine and performing arts, completely different pressure. If that building, that's $45 million building, is going to get built, we've got to find half or more of that from private funds, just because there's not the same sort of pressures in the pipeline. And I think as we go forward, there are going to be a lot of facilities that, probably beyond, me being president, where we'll have to say, is this something that we've just got to accept that we've got to take on and immediately assume 100% of the debt to do that? Or is this something that we have the luxury of taking the time to be able to get out there and creatively raise the money? We're going to raise the match. We're going to get there. I'm very confident of that. We're going to meet stepped up in a meaningful way this year. Forget the Wingate gift. We're sitting at $8.7 million toward, well, we've already surpassed this year's goal outside of the Wingate gift. I think we'll probably surpass $10 million again. So that's $30 million when last year was the record, and the record was 10, and we've averaged 5. There are a lot of folks that believe in what's going on here at UC. They believe in you, quite honestly. That's why in one night we raised $750,000 in scholarship money, because people want to bet on you. They've shown that UCA students graduate and they make a difference. So hey, let's get more of that across the stage.
Well, thank you both for coming to present tonight. We appreciate it.
Gotta get on in.
So I will go into my report. So the first thing is the presidential town hall. So thank you to everyone that came and submitted questions for our final presidential town hall. Special thanks to the Office of Greek Life for being our final partner for this, the last presidential town hall of this academic year. Big success, like President Davis said, we got some really good questions, and we're working on responses to the questions that we didn't get a chance to answer at the end. Sexual Assault Awareness Month. It's April. So it's time. Flyer will be included in the minutes. This is all of the different events that are taking place across campus throughout the month of April. So the first event is Thursday, April 4th. It's Wear Teal Day. And there will be an event at the Student Center Amphitheater from 12 to 2 where you can go and get a teal ribbon and show your support. So like I said, the flyer will be included in the minutes. You can look at all of the other events, and I encourage you to participate and attend in as many of them as possible. So, election applications are due tomorrow at 4 o'clock, no exceptions. 8 people have already submitted applications. They've had no issue submitting applications, so if you come up to me at noon tomorrow and tell me there's an issue with an application, you better have a really good reason. So it closes at 4 o'clock tomorrow, so please make sure you and any constituents that you know that are considering applying for open positions, they are due at 4 o'clock. We are not extending the deadline unless just a major catastrophe happens. Following that, the election rules meeting is tomorrow at 4 p.m. when applications are due in this room. So please make sure that if you are running for office, it is mandatory that you attend the election rules meeting or you send a representative on your behalf. If you or a representative are not in attendance, your name will be removed from the ballot. No exceptions. Taylor Beavers is chair of the Election Rules Committee, so she's got all of the same information that I do. So if you are running into problems and have questions and you can't get a hold of me, feel free to reach out to her as well. The campus talk that I've been talking about for the last 2 weeks is tomorrow during X period in the Otta Waldron Auditorium. So the president and Ms. Newton will be providing a similar update on the budget for next year and what tuition and fee increases are going to look like, as well as sharing some additional information on updates across the university. Following that, I will also be encouraging people to go to the Feminine Hygiene Products Program launch party, which I'm sure Senator Kale will talk about later in our agenda. So keep that on your radar as well. And finally, Ms. LaTanya is going to start the conclusion of our advisor leadership post for this semester. So,
real simple quote tonight. Michael Jordan said, "Earn your leadership every day." And that's super simple, but I think that has a whole lot of weight to it. Earn your leadership every day. So it's really not good enough that we come here on Monday and probably Wednesday and Friday, and maybe another day, and sometimes on the weekends. It's not good enough that we just show up. We have to earn our position. And I think when we think earning our position in leadership, I think that we have to, there's an assumption sometimes that because we are the cream of the crop, that it's a privilege and we just kind of go with it and we don't think anything of it. But you've got to earn your leadership role every day. And so that's a Michael Jordan quote. But there is a speaker, motivator by the name of Brent Gleason who wrote an article on it, 6 ways to earn your leadership every day. And there's a list of 6 in this particular article. The thing that I adored out of those 6 was lead and learn to be led. Lead and then allow yourself to be led. And if anybody is thinking like beyond the surface of that, I think a lot of times we think we have all the answers. We know it all. What they do, you can do it, no problems asked, no questions asked. What you do, they think they can do. Everyone seems to think that they can do other people's job and do it better until the time comes and it's time to show and prove. And I've talked to them and we've had some in-depth conversations, and sometimes we forget about the idea of grace. But let me tell you the trick, you want to know the true trick to good leadership? It's being able to serve. You cannot lead if you cannot serve. Yeah, you can run the show. Those 8 that he mentioned, I'm sure they're ready to take the reins and run this thing and almost show the exec board from 2018, 2019 how it's done. And then you sit up here and these lights get hot and it's 8 o'clock on a Monday. Listen, it's a different ball game when you're in that role. And so one of the things that I charge you with for the rest of the week is take a second to follow someone. I know you're brilliant, and I know you got all the answers. But take a second to follow someone. Because it's in your ability to follow that you will learn how to lead. Everyone, how many of you have a mentor when it comes to leadership? I mean, I know we all came out the womb brilliant, I do. But how many of you have a mentor that you follow? Someone that you said, you know what, I like the way that they lead. They may not be 100%, because what Brent Gleason says is we all are born with inherent traits of how to lead. I'm a natural organizer. I'm naturally good at that. I'm naturally good with managing my time. But there are some other things that I'm not so good at. Like when my triggers come. And people are getting on my last, you know how it is when people get on your last nerve and you're like, is everyone in the world an idiot today? Not really, but you know what I mean. But do you know what I mean? What are the things that kind of get you when you're leading? You've placed in the group meet 3 times that people need to respond and no one's responded. What's happening? Are they not reading it? And then your spidey senses kind of start going off like, do I have to say something else? Or, do you know what I mean? Those moments. How do you deal with adversity when you lead? Because it's not all roses, it's not all meetings with the president, it's not all the glam. Sometimes you gotta roll up your sleeves and use a little elbow grease and do the real work. So, my closing thing, I challenge you this week in some way, follow. Just for a day, just for a few minutes. Learn how to follow, because it is in that moment that you learn how to lead. Every day, earn your leadership every single day.
What questions do you have? Vice President Security.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you to our yoga leaders, Claire and Niska, for being here today. The SGA end of year banquet is April 22nd at 6 p.m. in the McCaslin Ballroom. I'll make announcements at the next meeting too about this. But at this banquet, we'll be celebrating our accomplishments this year, eating food, and giving out awards. We're still having a Senate meeting at 5 p.m. this day. It's going to be a shorter meeting, about an hour. And then afterwards, we'll just walk over to the McCaslin Ballroom. I'm passing around a sign-up sheet. They each bring 1 to 2 guests, and just write your name and then how many guests you bring on the sheets. And then the dress code is business professional for this event. I'm going to yield our report to Senator Hall for a Harley Pro exam.
I printed off the tip today, and it just says that when trying to object to procedure or a personal affront, you call for point of order. And then when trying to request information, that's when you use point of information.
And then I'm going to give the rest of my report to Senator Murphy for just speak on the mental health speaker that we're bringing in April.
Okay, so to have a little update, we have a location booked. We're going to be in the Doyne Health Science Auditorium, room 141. The date is going to be April 18th, and the time we have booked is from 7 to 9. The event's going to start at 7. It may not go all the way to 9, but we have just in case. And then we have one co-sponsor for sure. We're co-sponsoring with Active Minds, and then we're going to try to get the Counseling Center to co-sponsor with us as well. And all of you guys should attend if you can. It's going to be pretty fun. It's pretty cool. It'll be a nice little theatrical performance, and then nice discussion on mental health. So I think it's relevant to everybody here. So.
What questions do you have for Vice President McGarity, Senator Hall, or Senator Murphy? Senator Skate.
Could you please repeat that date again and time for us?
The date is April 18th, so it's the 18th of this month. And then the time is, the event starts at 7. So, and it could last up to 9 o'clock. 9 p.m. or 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Yeah.
Vice President McGarity.
I was going to add to that. The name of the speaker is Joshua Riverdale, and he's like spoken on, or I think he's like a writer for Forbes, if I'm correct. He's like spoken at like Wake Forest and other universities like that.
What other questions do you have? Okay. Vice President Markley.
All right, hello. So again, we have our story time popsicle stick edition. So move your name tag, see if you have a place today with a stick. No stick. Sorry, I got you. Okay, so if you have a popsicle stick, please stand, and then I want you to read your stick, and then answer your question, of course. Let's share stories.
Can I go last?
Sure. It's another one out there. Okay. No, that's it. Somebody move name tag. Okay.
Okay, so mine says, you would never be caught dead where? This one was kind of difficult, but I would say the Biotest Plasma Center because I actually used to donate plasma there, but then I had a very negative reaction and ended up having to be carried out on a stretcher and spent quite some time in the emergency room, so not going back.
Oh, so mine is, what ice cream flavor would you like to be and why? I would say chocolate because it's my favorite one.
My question is, if you were to perform in the circus, what would you do? I'm not exactly sure, but I would not be a lion tamer, that's for sure. Maybe the trapeze, like the swing from thing to thing, that'd be pretty fun. I have no idea how to do that, or if I could, but if they have a net, I'd love to try, so.
Mine is, what is one truth and one lie about your personality, and says to let everyone guess. So I guess, do I say just two things and you have to guess what's the truth and the lie? I'm really quiet. I'm really outgoing. Does that count? I don't know. I don't know.
That's a binary option.
So you can guess what it is.
It's the first one.
The first one.
If you're not quiet, you are very outgoing, so the first one's a lie.
Sorry, this was better.
Mine is, what is your favorite food? And my favorite food is my mom's chile verde. It has chili verde, rice and beans, and it always reminds me of like my mom's like travel from like Mexico and like her struggles, and it's like it hits home to me. Yeah, that's my favorite food.
Well, thanks for sharing, guys. Okay, and so next we have graduation course. So if you're graduating this upcoming May, so in a few weeks, congratulations. And please see me to get your graduation cords. Not today, of course, but closer to your time. They're silver, a little rope with the shimmery thing at the end. But you know what the cord is. Yeah, towel schools, thank you. And so, point C, we have publicity. So with publicity, so we talked about having everything information-wise submitted to the PR committee for your events this semester. So with this being April and our events coming to an end, all information should be submitted to the PR committee no later by the end of this week. If not, please don't expect for us to be able to have all necessary material pubbed and out to the student body in a timely manner, okay? The voting booth tables. So last week you all signed up, very appreciative of those who did. So Senator Skate has a sign-up sheet. She's gonna pass it back around because we have a few empty slots. Specifically on Friday, the entire day is empty, like for the most part, after speaking with some of you all. So I need you all to sign up for those, and then those will be included in the minutes as well. If you're a part of the election committee, you definitely should have more than one line signed. Those are one of your primary responsibilities as part of that committee, okay? And election rules, both committees. 2 separate committees, 2 different groups of people, all your names should be on there. Every last one of your names. And if it's not, we'll be contacting you directly. So be ready for that. Next we have Senator of the Month. So this senator has been very appreciated in their work for everything that they've been doing, but she's not here this afternoon. So you all see Senator Purge, I want you all to give her a hug or a high five or something and tell her congrats, okay? So we'll do our official stuff next week when she can actually feel it when she's here. And also for Senator of the Month, we'll be doing April Senator of the Month right before our last meeting, so in about 2 weeks, just to make sure we have enough time to get the information out and you all have time to plan your schedule for the next point President Davis Senator. So the day after the banquet, so on Tuesday, April 23rd at 5 o'clock, everyone who was Senator of the Week and everyone who has been Senator of the Month will have a chance to meet with President Davis and see him and converse and all those fun things. So we're going to do Senator of the Month for April a little earlier, so you all can have time to put on your schedule so you can know that. And lastly, Senator Fun Fact. So this senator loves to volunteer at the Arkansas Children's Hospital. You ready? Oh, Senator Farmer.
Is it Senator Patel?
No. Senator Graham. Senator Moore. No. Senator Bell. No. Senator Street. No. Are you sure? No. Okay. Senator Moore. No.
Is it Senator Golden?
Yeah. It is Senator Golden. So yeah, you want to talk about a little bit about that?
No, I just volunteer in Camp Water Play, so I'm with probably babies up to 11-year-olds, and I'll play with them. They love to play video games, so that's a big thing that I do. And then I'll just go to their rooms and hang out with them if they can go play them.
What questions do you have for Vice President Martley? Vice President Burton.
Yo. So, if you're interested in Vice President Finance position next year, you probably have already submitted your application. And if not, you have a day to do that. And then come see me if you are, because we need to have a conversation. Lots of things are going to change due to the new Engage or OrgSync to Engage. So, I mean, probably, arguably the most, like, if you're thinking content management tagged positions here, it's ops and finance, so a lot of just day-to-day functions that we do involve that content management service. And the fact, fundamentally, that it's changed makes our jobs fundamentally different. Obviously, we're not going to leave you high and dry, and you're going to come in here on April 22nd and be like, I don't know what I'm doing. So we're going to make nice transition documents, but we'll have to have a conversation with whoever's elected, whoever is curious about electing, getting elected, running, because the specifics are not the same. So the whole process has changed, especially for South, but it'll be okay. Additionally, I mentioned this, decided to wait until this meeting, but the faculty staff, they put on a golf tournament every year for our faculty and staff. Basically a time where their families get to come out, I suppose, get refreshed, and then play golf. And last year, maybe the year before, but I know for certain last year, we donated $200 as a Tier 3 sponsorship, which gets our logo on their shirts and in different places. So it's a promotional expenditure, which by statute doesn't have to be approved by y'all. But here we go. And I would like it to be approved. I mean, it's a good opportunity for publicity of ourselves and supports faculty staff. And Mr. Richard Hammond, who, if his kids weren't busy, would be sitting in one of these chairs right now, watching us. He's the only person that consistently, other than these 4 brilliant individuals that are faculty staff, that come and watch our videos for our meeting. Yeah, we're on video. That's all I got.
What questions do you have for Vice President Burton? We'll go into standing committee reports. Academic Affairs, Senator Avi.
We did not meet this previous week. I sent an email to our committee members. We made sure to email our respective deans about the Feminine Hygiene Lunch Party to make sure that they were aware of it's happening. As per Senator Purge asked me to, so I wanted to make sure we did that. A few of them have confirmed, a few of them are busy that day. And then also we have our academic advising survey that we will be publishing and launching this next week when we've opened for a couple weeks.
which I'm meeting with President Eddie Lucier about later on this week.
What questions do you have for Senator Ivey? Internal Affairs, Senator Watkins.
Great, so today we're going to be presenting motions for the previous notices that we presented last week. So the one on the Election Rules Committee and the Election Committee, and then one pertaining to special elections.
What questions do you have for Senator Watkins? Housing and Food Services, Senator Kale.
We just had a meeting a quick while ago with Jim Neighbors, and we were primarily discussing the reusable PO box survey. We have decided that since the majority of students, and there was about 800 students, want the reusable PO box program and not just eliminating styrofoam and going to like a cardboard system, that we are going to implement the program. We're going to hopefully roll it out in the fall. We're going to start with 400 boxes and see if people like are reacting to it and wanting to continue it. And when I expressed concerns about running out, he said that they can be shipped here in less than 2 days. So I addressed some of the concerns about whether or not people want to carry them around and the fee and things like that. He said that we could allocate money if we choose to do so. I'm going to discuss that with the executive and the rest of my committee before we decide. And then he's also going to contact other Airmark universities that have this program and see how they've worked out certain kinks and what their struggles and successes were for this program. And I have agreed to work with Jim Neighbors over the summer if he needs my help. So we will try and make this as efficient as possible. Additionally, the cookout is still happening for the food services workers. April 10th is confirmed, 5:30 to 6:30. And Senator Patel made an amazing card. It's out there. His artistic skills is amazing. So please sign that before you leave if you haven't. And then I'm going to yield the rest of my report to Senator Saxena, who recently did an international student survey concerning cafeteria.
Thank you. The survey was open for about a month, precisely 35 days. And I had about a 15% response from students, which wasn't as high as I expected, but it gave us some good findings about the food habits at cafeteria. About 61% of people were unsatisfied with the timing of the weekend, and about 70% of the students who took the survey were unsatisfied with the quality of the food on the weekend and during breaks, which I think is being really bad considering most of the students who eat at the cafeteria on weekends are international students. Other than that, over 40% of the people thought that the experience, or the overall experience of the cafeteria was bad, and 32% of the students were not sure if it was okay, which I feel, again, is alarming. There were 3 major concerns that were throughout in the responses. One was the lack of international dishes, and we spoke to Mr. Neighbors about this today, and he said there would be a possibility of adding an international station where we could showcase a dish every month or week, which would definitely be great. Also, the quality and the timings, which is, again, the major reason why the survey was sent out. And the third one being raw food, and which he said would be taken really seriously and could be approached with it. And that's all.
What questions do you have for Senators Kale or Saxena? Okay. Student Diversity Committee, Senator Ramirez.
Hello everyone. Okay, so today's diversity vote is not by a famous person. Be yourself, Senator Ramirez. Alright. So I had a meeting with President UC Davis today to go over International Diversity Food Night, which is supposed to be happening next Wednesday in the Student Center Ballroom from 5 to 7. And right now we have 7 student organizations registered. So we have the global team, the UC Japanese Club, Nepali Latino Student Association, Irish Student Association, African Student Association, and Honduras making their appearance. So if y'all are interested in entertainment and some food, come to the event. It'll be a great time. And so with that, that's the entire report.
What questions do you have for Senator Ramirez? Senator Ramirez, can you provide us the location of the event?
It's in the Student Center Ballroom 205.
What other questions do you have? Student Fee Advisory Committee, Senator Teeter.
All right, so tomorrow we're going over the business administration fee with Dr. Hargis, who's the Dean of the College of Business. been looking into that. That's tomorrow in Chambers during X period. You're all welcome to attend, because I know you're all dying to know about that fee. We're going to get back to y'all once again with radio station fee, and that should be all I have.
What question do you have for Senator Teeter? We'll go into ad hoc committee reports. Bear Advocacy Group, Senator Kilgrove.
Yes, so the big project that we're working on right now is our legislative guide, if you will. We're going to take all of the proposed amendments to the Constitution that are going to be presented to students to vote on, and we're going to try to create a little 1 to 2 sentence snippet about what the amendment would do, so students are very informed. Hopefully we can get that on a board outside and maybe a little flyers too. We can talk to our community about that. So I've been working with Senator Lockheed in Internal Affairs with that, and when we get that completed, we're going to present that to us. So that's what we're working on.
What questions do you have for Senator Kilgrove? Community engagement, Senator Sander.
Okay, so we did not meet last Sunday. The long one, but we're going to come up with more projects for the rest of the semester, probably little ones. But yeah.
What questions do you have for Senator Sander? Student resources, Senator Beavers.
Hello, I'll be presenting for Senator DePergio today. So an update on the child care initiative. Senator Skaggs and Senator Graham have been working on this project a lot. So they had a really great phone call with a former senator that was working on the project just to get some background information. They're going to be continuing research this week, and they plan to present some information for us next meeting. So stay tuned for that. An update on the OER initiative, Open Educational Resources, the textbook stuff. I'm really just trying to work on creating a committee, so I have a meeting with Dr. Barnes this Wednesday to talk about maybe getting a joint committee with some faculty members just to kind of get a good solid foundation for us to continue this project. Let's see. Oh, and I'm going to one more time to Senator, yes, Galarza to give the gazebo.
Okay, good evening. So first of all, thank you guys for filling out the surveys and getting those passed out and turned back in. So the overall results that we got were pretty positive, and we got a lot of results saying that people would use the gazebo. We did also get a lot of results that it was important for students to have power outlets in the gazebo, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is going to be a more expensive addition to the gazebo. And so then we talked it out, all of us that are working on the project, and we decided that while we did get some good responses, we needed more numbers and a larger pool of students to gather data from. And so I worked last night and created just an electronic version of it's the same exact survey, it's just on a computer. And so we're gonna send out that link. There's also a QR code which people can scan and do it on their phone. And so it's, like I said, it's the same survey, we just want a larger group of students to respond. So, that's it.
I'm also going to give part of my time to Senator Gale to talk about this.
Yes, tomorrow in Student Center 224, the feminine hygiene product launch and celebration will be happening. President Davis is going to speak, Provost is going to speak, Diane is going to be there, and it's going to be at 3 p.m. and it's going to be a great time. And we're also going to be giving out some certificates of appreciation and things like that. So please come, there will be food and it's going to be awesome. So.
What questions do you have for Senators Beavers, Galarza, or Kale? Sustainability, Senator Spears.
So over the past week, we kind of met via digitally over GroupMe, and basically we were just exchanging information about where some better places outdoors in the parking lots or any other kind of open space on campus that really needs either updated recycling cans or recycling cans in general, or any kind of trash cans, so it can really help curb littering on campus. And so now this week, what we'll end up doing is we'll take all the information kind of acquired the last month, whether it be inside the dorms or inside the academic halls or outside in general, and kind of create some hot zones where we can then kind of notify the physical plant, hey, these are some things you may want to consider trying to add over the summer and over the breaks that they have in the future to add either recycling bins or trash cans to help either curb littering or just help promote recycling in general, sustainability practices. That's about it.
What questions do you have for Senator Spears? We'll go into university committee reports. Senator Warner.
Yes, so kind of two reports. By the way, parking appeals, we did not accept any appeals. No surprise there. But I did want to mention something. Going through the appeals, we actually did lower the cost of a few fees that students had gotten just from, this is like a fun tip. If you, for whatever reason, use a different car than what you're used to and you forget to take over your parking tag, sometimes they will just write you for not having a permit rather than following up. So if you actually have a tag, make sure that you go tell them that, because that will actually reduce your fee. It's two different things, not having a permit and they call it misuse of, or miss of display, not displaying, something like that. Either way, so if that happens, make sure you get that covered and they'll reduce your costs. And then second university report, so grad council has been working for the past, well, all year actually, over 3 things: updating the graduate bulletin, trying to and get 2 proposals to increase GA stipends, and also to allow all GAs to have tuition remission. So if you're looking at going to graduate school here, it's something that's going to be extremely important for you, especially if you're applying for assistantship. So those 2 reports will be finalized at the end of this month, and they will be pushed along to administration, probably Ms. Newton. I am a little nervous after seeing her proposal and how tight the numbers are with our proposals because, well, there's actually a law that is going to affect that requires us to pay GAs a minimum amount, and right now we're actually under that amount, and we have to increase that over the next couple of years to make sure we're on par with the law. So you should probably, if you hear anything about it before the end of the year, it'll be right at the end of the semester, probably not till the fall. But just keep your ears open for that, especially for those of you that are looking to apply for a GA position here. And then if you have any more questions about like the details of it all, you can just come ask me whenever.
Other university committee reports? The Sexual Misconduct Awareness and Prevention Committee met this morning at 11 o'clock in Lingo. Ms. Shar also sits on that committee. And the main update that we got was this committee has been working on a victims advocate proposal, bringing a victims advocate to campus for victims of sexual assault or sexual misconduct. And Ms. Shar and I both shared frustration that this has been an ongoing conversation for at least the last 2 years, if not longer, and we made no progress on this. So her and I both shared in that frustration that there are things we need to be doing, things that don't have to wait for us to apply for a grant. So currently, Drs. Tane Duncan and Jennifer Deering are working on a grant proposal to acquire $300,000 to implement this program. Part of the reason why that grant is so large is it would be over a 3-year period, and it would also create a new office. A new office would be created with this money, and an additional person would need to be hired to run that office in addition to the victims advocate. So there are some things, according to federal guidelines, that have to be met in order to be eligible for the grant, things that we don't have in place. Ms. Shar brought up a good point today that Jeffrey Buckholtz, for those of you that have been on campus for a couple of years, that you've heard him present, he's come to campus twice within the last 4 or 5 years. And one of the things he comments on is our website for victims of sexual assault or sexual misconduct is terrible. There is no one-stop shop for students that are victims of these incidences to go one place and find the resources that they need and to know what all is available to them in that situation. That is part of the stipulation of this federal grant, is that you have to have some type of website or web page that has all of that information tied into one. Currently ours is in about 4 different places. That is something that Ms. Shar and I agree doesn't have to wait until next March when they're getting ready to apply for the grant. Someone could start on that now. So there are a lot of things that were a little frustrating about that meeting, but we're going to keep pushing and hopefully more progress is going to happen and more work is going to keep going forward on that. We also discussed Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so that was the flyer that I showed you all earlier that's going to be included in the minutes. So keep kind of up to date on that, share it out with your constituencies, encourage people to attend those events because they're really important, and I think they affect more people than you think. So, awesome. Other university committee reports.
I actually had a question.
Yes.
So you said that right now there's like 4 different websites that you have to go to get all those resources. On the app that they just released, are all of those listed there?
I don't believe they're not all listed there because there's a few different things from all the different websites, but we did talk about that today, about finding a way as Drs. Duncan and Deering are working on their grant proposal to find a way to integrate the UCA Safety app into that, since we do have this app available now. Do we have any unfinished business? Senator Lockings.
I move that we amend Article 4, Section 2 and 3 to eliminate unnecessary practices and procedures in order to make SGA more efficient.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we amend Article 4, Sections 2 and 3 to eliminate unnecessary practices and procedures in order to make SGA more efficient. Discussion on the motion, Senator Lockings.
So basically, this previous notice it was brought up when we first had to do election dates, how we have the election committee and the election rules committee. So this previous notice is to eliminate the election committee and to put some of their duties into the election rules committee, as well as understanding that some of the duties under the election committee is things that the exec board does. So that'll be scrapped as well. So it's also just to show that the Constitution reflects what we're actually doing and to make it more efficient to have one committee pertaining to the election.
Further discussion on the motion? Senator Girion.
All right, so just to remind everybody, remember how Josh had to create 2 separate committees and then he had to take those people out in the middle of our Senate meeting for 5 minutes and then they discussed something and then they came back in? That's exactly what that committee is. That's what we're getting rid of. Because with those 2 committees that we have, they can't also serve on the same committee. So he has to, instead of finding 4 people that aren't involved with the election whatsoever, he has to now find 8, and 4 of those people are just picking a date, essentially, to do these practices. So getting rid of these sections is actually just an incredibly streamlined idea. And thank you, Senator Lockings, for addressing this. So I rise in support of this.
Thanks, sir. Senator Johnson.
I don't know if this is a point of inquiry, but can't they be running if they're one of the 8 people serving on this board as well?
Correct. If you serve on either one of these committees, you can't be running in the election, and you can't be you can't endorse candidates running for office either because you are essentially the people manning the election or the voting booths as well. Senator Jeter.
Will Senator Lockings yield to a question?
Yes.
Will the duties of the current the election committee be moved to the election rules committee?
Yeah, so what I did is I went through the election committee duties and put the ones that the committee actually does under the election rules committee, and then President Edgar Lucero, or might have been Senator Therion, also pointed out that some of the duties under the election committee are things that exec does, like hosting the rules meeting and things like that. So I just completely scrapped that from the Constitution because that's not something the committee does, it's something exec does.
So the dates for election, are they under the control of the election rules?
Yes,
okay.
the rules committee will do that.
Very good, thank you. Yield my time.
Further discussion on the motion? Senator Ivey.
I just had another, maybe just a point of information, but we can get to the question of, with the things that exec already does, is that constitutionally in there, or does that need to be moved around to where it is under the executive position?
Yeah, so to reflect that, I wouldn't put that in this one because it's all from different articles, the executive committee duties, but I could put that in exec duties. But as far as this one, this is just sort of clearing it from the election committee and giving it to the rules. And so if we wanted to, once again, make sure we're having the Constitution be reflective of our practices, we'll move that to the executive offices.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion, Senator Therion.
Point of information, will President Joshua Edgar Lucero yield to a question? So if this passes, does this have to go to the student body or does this happen
it has to go to the student body because it is a constitutional amendment. So if it passes this body theoretically tonight, it would go on the ballot for next week. If the student body votes to approve it, it will go into immediate effect and will take effect in the fall.
Excellent. Okay.
Further discussion on the motion? Vice President Burton?
Yeah. I'm not sure if people have hesitancy, they can't really read your faces. But it seems like a clear no-brainer to me what this is. It's a redundancy issue, and elimination of redundancies makes us more efficient. So that's it. That's all I got.
Any further discussion? Senator Weston?
Thank you. The only reason why I oppose this is because it gives 4 people something to do in SGA other than just sit here every Monday. So maybe if we could keep it and just move that time frame of electing a date on a different day, then it would be useful. So with that said, I rise in opposition, and I'm about to sit down. Thank you.
Any final discussion?
Motion to approve by unanimous consent.
Second.
She has to have an option.
Can you do that again, please?
Motion to approve by unanimous consent.
Second.
Motion passes. Is there any more unfinished business? Senator Lockings?
I move that we amend Article 5, Section 4 to, once again, eliminate unnecessary practices and procedures in order to continue transparency in SGA.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we amend Article 5, Section 4 to eliminate unnecessary practices and procedures in order to continue transparency. Discussion on the motion, Senator Lockings.
Okay, so this previous notice, at the beginning of the semester, I believe, and anybody on the exec board can clarify if I'm not saying this correctly, but we had more than half of our freshman class was gone. So in the Constitution, there are 3 ways by which the exec committee has to decide what to do about this. And so one of the ways was that the executive committee, so all of us who had the exec meeting Wednesday, would send in recommendations to the president, and then the president would appoint who they thought with majority approval of SGA, and versus the other options that were the appointment committee and just having a special election. So I was eliminating the petition for the executive committee because I don't think it's right for the exec committee to be like, hey, I think you should put this person up or put my friend up, and then for the president to choose somebody and then, you know, have SGA approve it. I think that it should either be the appointment committee because that's their job, or we should decide on a special election in the process so the student body always has, like, you know, a way to approve it.
Further discussion on the motion? It has been
Motion to approve by unanimous consent.
Second.
Motion passes. Is there any more unfinished business?
Yes, please.
Vice President Burton.
Excellent. I move that the UCASGA okay, let's start over one more time. I move that the UCASGA allocate no more than $200 for a Tier 3 sponsorship of the 4th annual faculty staff golf tournament to be held on Monday, May 6th at Nutters Chapel Golf and Country Club. All funds garnered from the reserve account. I can't type, so that's going to be fun.
It has been moved and seconded that the UCASGA allocate no more than $200 for a Tier 3 sponsorship of the 4th annual faculty staff golf tournament to be held on Monday, May 6th at Nutters Chapel Golf and Country Club. All funds garnered from the reserves account. Discussion on the motion, Vice President Burton.
Yeah, D's and F's are the same this time. Yeah, so we've done this in the past, last year at least. I could do some digging and find out how frequently we sponsored them. But we have the means, and it's good publicity, and our logo gets out there, and it benefits the faculty staff that serve us, because we just pay to come here, right? They get paid to serve us. Lets them have a little bit of leisure, fun time. Okay.
Point of information, have we moved to new business yet?
Was that old business or new business?
We're still in unfinished business,
That
not
was-
correct?
Yeah, no. I misheard. Yeah, no worries. It's out of order. And so new business.
Any more unfinished business? So now we'll move into new business. Okay.
Do I have to redo the motion? Because I can't.
Yes, for proceedings.
Sweet.
Just have to go copy and
Control Z. Control V. The UCASGA allocate no more than $200 for a 2-3 sponsorship at the 4th annual faculty staff golf tournament to be held on Monday, May 6th at Nutters Chapel Golf and Country Club. All funds garnered from the reserve account.
Second. Once again, it's been moved and seconded that the UCASGA allocate no more than $200 for a Tier 3 sponsorship of the 4th annual faculty staff golf tournament to be held on Monday, May 6th at Nutters Chapel Golf and Country Club. All funds garnered from the reserve account. Discussion on the motion. Vice President Burton.
Yeah. This is where I can do the copy paste? You already heard it. That's really all I've got. Yeah.
So further discussion on the motion. It's been moved and seconded that the UCASGA
Objection.
It has been moved and seconded that the UCASGA allocate no more than $200 for a Tier 3 sponsorship of the 4th annual faculty staff golf tournament to be held on Monday, May 6th at Nutters Chapel Golf and Country Club. All funds garnered from the reserve account. Roll call vote, Vice President Martley.
Motion for a hand raised.
Second.
Okay. Vote will be conducted by hand raising. All those in favor show by way of hands. All those opposed show by way of hands. Any abstentions show by way of hands. Okay. Motion passes.
Basically,
Any additional new business? Any announcements? Dr. Marta?
I have two. Yeah, first one. Those of you that are running for one of these positions, the deadline, as you said, technically it is 4 p.m. tomorrow, and that's when the meeting starts at 4 o'clock. However, because it is my responsibility to approve all of these things, and I am teaching between 2:30 and 4:30, if you apply between 2:30 and 4 o'clock, you may come to the meeting, get all ready, start campaigning, and then have some kind of a problem. So, please make sure it would be it's incumbent on you to really make it like 2:30 instead of 4, so that you don't have any surprises. Okay. The second thing is, Lucy's Place, do you know what Lucy's Place is? Okay. Lucy's Place is a homeless shelter for LGBTQ youth in Little Rock. And the Honors College has a fundraiser for it every year. And this year, the fundraiser is at King's Live Music on Saturday. And the headliner is called Cadillac Jansen, and they're going to be bringing fun band from. And the opening act is. Last year, and I don't know, was anybody in the event? I don't know if anybody in this room was there. You were there, and it was not so. We didn't suck, did we? We did not suck. So it's a good opportunity to get out, and so old people that go to bed at 10, you can come out, and we'll be done by 9:30. Starts at 8. We come on at 8:30. But right, so it's the opportunity that but those of you that actually. After your night doesn't start until 10, well, you can just have a little, and then you can go do your outfit. So if you can make it, it's a really good cause.
Any other announcements, Senator Johnson?
Building off Dr. Marta's announcement, I'm the chair for the Honors Council, so I've been helping plan this event. We also have a silent auction during the concert, and I've managed to finesse gift cards and food from all of the bakeries and from Andy's and stuff. And last year, because like the silent auctions at the beginning and people don't really realize it, everything went for like way below what it cost. So even if you just want to come and get some like free treat cards, silent auction, the money, like we raised last year, it was a record amount because Kings has been really great and Dr. Tarka's band has been really great to help us. So if you come, there are like things that you can do besides listen to music. You get really cheap candies.
Senator Galarza.
So something that President Edinger Lucero had mentioned earlier is that campaigning can't start tomorrow until after 5. So if you have applied and there's an event that you had planned for like 4:30 or something or before 5, don't do it.
Any other announcements? Senator Teeter.
Just a reminder that Relay for Life is Friday, so I expect to see all of your beautiful faces out there. So.
Senator Kale.
You already know. Period party tomorrow.
Any other announcements? Vice President Martley.
PR, can you be with me for 5 minutes in my office, please, after this? Thanks.
Senator Van Brunt.
Oh, I have an announcement. What's your band's name? We are, and this is a great pun, Unhurtable Cats. Cat herding. We can't.
Vice President McGarity.
Rules and ethics are meeting after meeting, so stay here.
Any other announcements? Will Senators Scaife and Graham and anyone else that's working on the child care program, will you be with me for just a minute after Senate? And if you serve on the election committee or the election rules committee, I need you to stay in your seat for 2 minutes when we dismiss because I have to cover some things going into elections this week. So, any final announcements? Okay, this meeting's adjourned.
We come on at 8:30. Ready.